Hey everyone, just thought I'd go ahead and do an update here on my 50-gallon Reef Cube aquarium. I'd like to talk about some additions, some coral growth as well, which I'm excited to see. So let's go ahead and get started. I've got the video started out here focusing in on my new frog spawn. This is the first frog spawn I've ever had, and I thought I'd go ahead and get this because I didn't want to deal with wandering bubble tip anemones. And I do have in my quarantine tank a pair of Ocellaris clowns. I'm hoping they'll host within this coral without irritating the coral too much. I just don't want to take a chance with the anemones falling into a coral and stinging each other to death, which would probably happen overnight or while I'm away from home. So there's my frog spawn. I'll go ahead and bring the camera around to the front of the tank. And you see I still have a lovely yellow wrasse here, which is the sole inhabitant other than the two cleaner shrimp. Again, I had a fish wipe out. This one fish survived, and I've got a tank full of fish going through quarantine treatment right now. Alright, so I've got a few new items. I've moved a few things around and just did my water change yesterday. It was a 20% water change, which I do about every 3 or 4 weeks. And I went ahead and tested the alkalinity of the tank before the water change, and it was 7.7, which is very stable here for this tank. A little bit less than I'd like, but it's very stable. I also tested the 48-hour-old batch of salt water, and that came in at 8.1. So, there you go. Alright, so what we've got here, just a little review here. Go ahead and show you the ricordea here. It's orange ricordea, which I like very much. It's grown, it seems, and it's got a few mouths, so it might be going through the process of splitting. I moved this guy over here because what formerly occupied this site, which was a rock anemone, decided to go on a pilgrimage all the way over to the other side, right by my cinerina, and the rock anemone went ahead and planted itself right here. It's dangerously close to the cinerina, and I did come home to find the cinerina kind of recoiled a little bit. Apparently the stinging tentacles from the rock anemone were irritating it. So I'm keeping an eye on these two, considering the proximity, and also to my pink goniopora, very close. Now I know my chances of getting the anemone to move with its foot firmly embedded in the rock is going to be very difficult. So I can easily move the cinerina and the goniopora. So we'll see how that works out. My Xenia island is growing. It's pretty much as well here. I'm trying to keep it apart and away from any of the rock work. I don't want this to start spreading like the weed it can be known to be. Behind that, I've got my other new addition, which is a hydnophora. And after getting it, of course, this acro, it's looking like a furry acro with a kind of electric green fur, found out that it's extremely, or can be extremely aggressive, and it will typically kill any coral it comes into contact with. It seems like this particular coral species comes out to be the winner. So it's clearly very low in the tank right now. I'm going to move it up the rockwork and situate it somewhere where it's not going to be touching or getting close to anything. Alright, talking about new growth here. I've got my little colony, or a couple of colonies of trumpet coral, and these are really dividing up. The upper section here, got several of these heads have formed additional mouths and split into two, which is great. And the lower one, the more fluorescent one, is looking pretty much like a mess right now. That was initially maybe 2 or 3 polyps. It looks like it's anywhere up to maybe 7 right now. And it looks like it's still in the process of dividing. So, growth is good. Happy to see that. Coming over a little bit here, I've got my pavona, my potato chip coral. This was an ORA frag. And it's plating. I'm seeing growth in the plates, which is looking good. I'd like to see it a little bit more green. I'm seeing a lot of brown there. but it is growing. It seems to like the location of the tank, which is about mid-level, and I've seen colonies of these online that look absolutely beautiful. I'm hoping it will plate out and resemble a cluster of cabbage, or maybe plating montipora. We'll see how this comes along. Coming over to the left of that, got my montipora digitata, and this frag started out with much smaller, with just 4 tips, and it's got 8 white tips now, and this thing is grown in height and in length as well. Seems to be doing well. I don't know if it's encrusting yet in the base of the rock where it is inserted into the rock, but it seems to be doing really well. So I'm happy with the progress that's made. Right beside it, I've got my Ponape birdsnest right up here. This is an ORA frag, and it seems like it's growing and doing very well also. It's got the pink tips, and you can see all the tips are pinkish white. Some of the tips are turning into little V's or splitting off. So that tells me it's doing well, it's happy, it's growing, so I'm pleased with that as well. I don't know if I'm going to move it up further, if I need to move these guys apart. I don't want them to encroach or grow into each other. I'd rather not see that. Here I've got my montipora, and this guy I had moved out because he was formerly in the shade, and he was also in the shade during a period of time where I had the lights turned off for about 3 days to get rid of a problem of hair algae I had in the tank. This guy has some areas where the branches have turned white and looks like there's a little bit of dead tissue on here. Other portions seem to be okay. Keeping an eye on this to see how it's doing, and hopefully it'll make it out all right. All right, we've got the frog spawn, which we've seen. In front of that, we've got the green mushroom, and the mushroom seems to be okay here. Doesn't look entirely happy, doesn't look entirely sad. Just seeing how that's doing. And right next to my hammer coral, and I know the hammer coral will definitely send out some feeder or stinger tentacles, and I'm going to keep an eye on the placement here. Looks like the hammer's doing a lot better. For a while it would not open up, and I found in the base of the coral it had a vermitid snail, one of those little buggers. Seemed to be annoying it quite a bit. After I broke the snail off, it's unfurled the hammer coral, and it's been looking pretty healthy. Coming down, I've got my acan, and I'm real happy with this. I initially had 3 heads here, and you can see along the base there's new little baby polyps that are growing, and it looks like they're growing around the frag, so more than just the 3 we see here in the foreground. So the whole little cluster looks like it's risen itself up to allow space for the new polyps to form. I'm going to see how that continues to grow. I don't know if I want it to form into a half a baseball or a softball type shape, but we'll see how it does. It seems to be happy. And sweeping across, we've got the toadstool leather corals, which seem to be doing really well. They seem to like their placement and flow. The polyps are mostly out. Sometimes they'll close up and close in. And I'm waiting to see how this grows, if so, how quickly it grows, and if it's going to bud or produce any new little branches. And over here we've got my duncan, and I'm real happy to see a new little polyp forming on the side of it with some little tentacles around what appears to be a mouth. So that's a good news there. I was a little concerned about this duncan. I didn't know if it was happy where it was placed, but it seems to be doing well. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom out here. So that's pretty much what we're looking at right now. We've got a few other little corals in a few other locations, but nothing noteworthy at this time. I do have a group of fish in quarantine tank under observation. They'll be there for several more weeks, and I'll decide whether or not I'm going to go ahead and medicate them. I have added to my sump, I've added some red Gracilaria macroalgae to see if it'll help in the job of nutrient export. But the biggest feat, I would say, in this relatively new aquarium is the fact that all of that disgusting brown fuzzy hair algae that was on the top of the higher rock is gone. I don't know if I have the trochus snails to thank. Got one over here on my Tridacna, another one over here by the Cinerina. But these trochus snails are incredible. I had one in the sump and it completely cleared up the return portion from all the algae that was encrusted on the glass walls of that. So that was terrific. And I think that's about all I've got here at this point in time. I'll get an update out sometime down the road here, and we'll have to check in and see how the fish are doing in quarantine. I'm looking forward to adding those guys. Hope all is well, and thanks for watching.